It's Monday here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We've got Ray Fittipaldo, one of our great Steelers beat writers. I want to talk to Ray about the Rhamondre Stevenson's contract, the running back for the New England Patriots, who got more money per year in his deal than Naji Harris would have gotten if the Steelers signed his fifth-year extension. What does that mean for Naji Harris's future with the Steelers? That and talk about the changes coming up to training camp and why those changes are happening, as well as some Pirates talk with Noah Hiles. It's going to be a fun Monday episode of the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it.
You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter.
Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Ray Fittipaldo. And as always, you can find all the written work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. You can find all our daily podcasts on our podcast on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all the Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, they have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those different beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap all day, every day. And they're always switching new ones in and out to get you a new experience. More on them later. Ray, we didn't get you last week while you was on vacation, but now that we're back, I want to talk to you about something that happened last week, and that was Rhamondre Stevenson, the Patriots running back. He signed a new four-year deal worth $36 million total, $17 million guaranteed. On average, that's about $9 million per year. That's significantly higher than what the Steelers turned down to pay Naji Harris at $6.7 million. And I still say I don't understand that move from the Steelers, because it would have lined you up to be able to pay Naji Harris what would have been around like the 13th, 14th, 15th most paid running back in the NFL type of money for a single year. And then you could see after 2 more years, is he done? Does he have a little bit more left in him? And then work on paying him from there. Now you're in a position where you either have to pay him after this season and sign him to a longer deal contract, or you're reshopping at running back while you're still trying to figure out these positions. What do you make of the Stevenson deal, how the Steelers have gone about it, and what any of this means for the future of Naji Harris in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, listen, much like the receiver market and that Justin Jefferson contract, obviously a ton more money because of the differences between the way NFL teams view receivers and running backs. But Chris, when you wait like the Steelers have waited, you're going to end up paying more. And I think the Stevenson contract, $17 million guaranteed. You said it, the Steelers turned down Naji Harris at $6.7 million on a 1-year deal. So when I look at it, I just think, when they just made that decision in the first week of May, it signaled that they were ready to move on from Naji Harris. I know what Omar Khan has said. That doesn't mean a deal can't be done in the future, but just the business aspect of this suggests if they wait until next March, that number is going to go up even more, perhaps, than the Stevenson number. So, I think in the end, when they told us they weren't interested in picking up his 5th-year option, I think just read between the lines that means they weren't interested in having him back at all for the 2025 season.
Listen, I think there's a lot of arrows that point in that direction right now when you look at the Steelers and how they've played, or how they played their hand here. When it comes to the salary cap, when it comes to Naji Harris's contract, and it makes me wonder, what's the plan here? Would the plan be to make Jaylen Warren the number 1 after this upcoming season? Would the plan be to go and reinvest at running back? And that's part of where I think this could be a misstep, is that this is a team where I think Naji Harris, he's shown you with 1,000 yards each of the last 3 seasons, only running back to the NFL to do that. And again, with most of those games being with bad offensive lines and bad quarterback play and an offense that was not coordinated well, I think that's a sign that, like, if things get going in this Arthur Smith offense, I think that's a solid bet that he would do even better than he has done. And he's also been very durable. He hasn't missed games. So, even though he started the 2022 season with a bad foot, he was able to play throughout it. And then when he got back, when he got the steel plate out of his shoe, He played very well. And to me, it's like, if you're moving on from that, that means you have some other plans here. I just think that, like, with the Steelers right now, even if all their draft picks work out for the past couple of years, like Piano Benton keeps taking steps forward. Let's say DeMarvin Leal steps up. Let's say Joey Porter Jr. is a real number one corner. Let's say Peyton Wilson's an awesome linebacker, and all the offensive linemen work out. And that's not mocking them. It's just saying, like, let's line up every draft pick to be successful right now. They still need to draft a number 2 corner at some point. They still probably need to draft another defensive lineman at some point. There's still going to be other additions, another wide receiver next year, maybe. So there's still many other additions that you want to address. They may want to go dip back into quarterback soon. If Russell Wilson's only here for a year, or Justin Fields, like, there's a lot of other things you need. And if you need to go back and address the running back position, that could lessen your chance to hit on those spots and complete your roster.
I think the one nice thing about the running back position, Chris, is you don't necessarily have to invest a high draft pick or any draft pick at all when you go out and get one. Look at Jaylen Warren and what a find he was as an undrafted free agent. I remember Warren's rookie training camp, talking to Eddie Faulkner up at St. Vincent. And Eddie just laid it out about how Jaylen was one of his favorite running backs in the entire draft. Not in the undrafted free agent pool, in the entire draft. And the Steelers didn't have to invest a draft pick in him. So, listen, if you can tap into Eddie Faulkner again and say, hey, Eddie, like, let's really scout this hard next year. Let's go out and find our next Jaylen Warren. Maybe you can get away with a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick or an undrafted free agent. So I know those guys don't come around every year. I know Warren is somewhat of an outlier. But, Chris, if you look around the league, and how many starting running backs are not 1st, 2nd, 3rd round picks. How many of these guys come in the mid to late rounds and even undrafted free agents? What you laid out there is absolutely right. Your premium picks have to be used on O-line, D-line, quarterbacks. We all get that. I just think the Steelers are confident enough in their scouting department, and with Eddie Faulkner still on this coaching staff, that they can go out and find another diamond in the rough to eventually replace Najee Harris.
I think that's certainly, what the way they're looking at it right now. And when you go back and you look through how things have worked out, like this past year alone, your top rushers, and there's got Christian McCaffrey, 1st round pick, Derrick Henry, 2nd round pick, but Kyron Williams, a 5th round pick, was the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL. Now, James Cook, the 4th leading rusher, he was a 2nd round pick. DeAndre Swift, 2nd round pick. James Conner, 3rd round pick. Najee Harris, 1st round pick. So, I mean, there's guys there, but I think if the Steelers could hit at a cheap running back pick there, I think that could work out for them. I think the problem that I would say is that, and granted, this is a different front office, so they shouldn't be saddled with this, but they tried that for years after Le'Veon Bell. They tried with Benny Snell. They tried it with, Anthony McFarland. They tried with, 3rd and 4th round and 5th round guys for years. And then eventually I think they were just like, you know what, we've had enough of this. Let's go get a Najee Harris. And, I think that Najee Harris has certainly helped them win several games throughout the past 3 years. And without him, they probably don't make the playoffs in the 2 of the 3 years that they've made them. But at the same time, I think if you're looking at it and you're looking at the trends in the NFL, Omar Khan's been a business decision guy. He's been a guy that's been trying to be savvy, staying with the times of the NFL. And the times of the NFL right now is do not pay running backs big money unless you're in the specific position where, like, everything else is lined up in your team and you just think, you know what, a Christian McCaffrey could put us over the top with a running back. And I don't think the Steelers are there yet. They would, if the Steelers offensive line wasn't all young players that we're still waiting to see how they develop, if their defense was completely set and they didn't have questions about how Joey Porter Jr. would grow up or how Dante Jackson would fit in, then you know what, maybe Najee Harris would get paid because they're like, you know what, Najee Harris is the final piece to this puzzle to get them over the top. And we also don't even know what this offense is going to look like, period. But I just think that it's that uncertainty that, Omar Khan's like, you know what, no reason to lock us into anything. We want to keep our options open.
Yeah, and they got a bunch of big contracts coming down the road, Chris. If you look at this year, really only Pat Freiermuth is out there as a possible extension. But if you look at next season, TJ Watt is up. They're going to have a bunch of guys coming down the road that you're going to have to either think about paying or definitely are going to have to pay. So this is just one other way. We look at $6.7 million and we think it's not a big number. But, in the end, I think every little bit counts on the cap. And if you think you can go out there and get somebody who is cheaper to do Najee Harris's job and do it as well. I think that's basically the reasoning behind the decision that was made back in the first week of May.
Absolutely. I do think that that's going to be part of it. I want to talk to you about other changes the Steelers are making, and that's in training camp and how they're doing things and why they're doing things differently this year, and how it's also going to impact you, the fans, the people that are listening here and watching here, because the schedule is going to be different this year as far as when you're going to be able to attend training camp and how you're going to be able to enjoy it with your families. So we'll get into all that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, again, they have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap. Mike's Beer Bar is an amazing experience. You go in there, they have TVs everywhere, over 20 televisions, so you can catch whatever sporting event that you want to be able to stay in tune with. It's a great option to go to before, during, and after Pirates games, whether they're home or away. It's a great place where you can enjoy it at a time out in the North Shore. If you want to sit outside and enjoy the outdoors, that's great. But if you want to sit inside and stay cool in the AC, they got that too. They have so many different things there that you can enjoy, including their steak on a stone meal, where you get your choice cut of steak brought to you on a heated stone. Every time you cut off a piece and press of steak and press it into the stone, you choose how well done you want every single bite. It's the best bar in all of Pittsburgh, Mike's Beer Bar. Go there today. When you get there, tell them Chris sent you. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. And now let's switch to the topic to some Steelers training camp talk. And I want to go over this with you, Ray, because I think this is interesting from both a fan appreciation standpoint and from a strategy standpoint, because typically, at least as long as I've been going to and covering training camps on the Steelers, the practices usually happen like right at 2, and they're all like they were all midday to early afternoon to mid afternoon, and then they finish up in the mid to late afternoon, and then they'd go. We talk to them, they'd go eat dinner, and that would be that, and that would be the time for fans to come. But there's a lot of practices this year that are going to start at 10:30 or 11:45, and not 2 p.m., not 1:55 p.m. And there's still some of the weekends will still start at 1:55 and do things that way. There's still a couple days that are like that, but there's a lot of morning practices here. What have we learned about why that change was made?
Yeah, Brian Bacco asked Mike Tomlin about that change on the final day of minicamp, and I thought Mike's answer was interesting. The Steelers have a new strength and conditioning staff, and I think it's really just a change in philosophy of how they want to treat these players and how they want to get these players fueled and healthy through training camp. So when you're basically having meetings in the morning, a walkthrough late morning, and then practice in the afternoon, when you're exhausted like that, you don't really feel like eating dinner, 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, when these guys would be in the dining hall up at St. Vincent. So you practice hard in the morning. Basically, they flip the schedule. Now they'll do a walkthrough in the afternoon. Those guys are going to be able to fuel their bodies better in this scenario, and just maybe be a little bit healthier and feel a little bit better going out there every morning. So Mike Tomlin has had the same strength and conditioning staff basically since he arrived here in 2007. They have a new staff now, and obviously this new staff has a different approach for training camp.
I think that's very interesting to see how things are, how this might impact, will this impact injuries throughout the season? Because the Steelers have dealt with a lot of injuries. And listen, there's been changes in how they've done training camp before. I mean, I think one of the more notable ones that are out there is, Mike Tomlin, when he first became head coach, he openly talked about how he wanted to make training camp miserable in his first year. He wanted to make it so tough that when they got through it, it was like they were prepared for anything. And it did work for a time, but he said by the end of his first season, he realized the team was ground down to a nub, and he was just like, oh, maybe I did this too much. And so in 2008, he backed up a little bit. I mean, still intense training camp, but he backed off a little bit, made it a little bit easier, and then they won the Super Bowl. So I think it's important to be open to changing things, and I wonder if this will help with injuries, because injuries have been a major factor for the Steelers for several years now. TJ Watt lasted up until the end of the season last year, but half the defense was beaten up last year. I mean, they were starting practice squad guys at multiple positions, linebacker and safety, throughout the second half of the season. TJ Watt missed half the season 2 years ago. Cam Hayward dealt with his injury last year. And I do wonder, will all of this help with that? Because if the Steelers are a much healthier team in either of the last 2 seasons, they probably get at least a couple more wins in each of those. I mean, heck, if TJ Watt plays it, 2 years ago, they're definitely in the playoffs with some of the close games they lost without him. And then last year, if the defense just isn't banged up, or maybe if Kenny Pickett doesn't get hurt against the Cardinals, or the Patriots, or in the midst of the Patriots or the Colts, maybe they win a couple of those games, and maybe they don't win some of the games down the stretch because of how Mason Rudolph played. But injuries have played such a big role in the Steelers, and I wonder if this changes that.
Yeah, I think injuries in the broader perspective, Chris, it's an interesting scenario to talk about, because just not even talking about training camp, but the Steelers have had a bunch of injuries, as you noted, and maybe that was partly behind the change in the strength and conditioning staff. Just finding ways to keep players healthier throughout a season. Listen, I mean, it's a brutal sport. There's going to be times that 300-pound linemen fall on other 300-pound linemen, and there's going to be ankle sprains and things of that nature. But the soft tissue injuries, right? The groins, the hamstrings. Maybe this new staff has a better way or a different way of approaching the season. You saw, just as I did, how much they kept track of the players' steps throughout OTAs, the way they monitor them, with those computer chips. So they are paying attention to everything. And we'll see if the Steelers can get through a season healthier than they have in the past. But I just think it's interesting that they did make a change within the strength and conditioning staff, just as they have with most of the front office. And I'm sure they're hoping that some of their key players can be standing upright at the end of the season, because, as you noted, that hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, I wonder if it's also going to be a thing where we talk about how. I wanted to talk about from the fan perspective, because we can talk about it from the player perspective, but for the fans, I wonder what this does for the enjoyable day, because typically when I've helped different groups take kids, I've been on the board for the Kingsley Association or the Community Empowerment Association in Pittsburgh, and when we set up times and days for the groups of kids that are at those programs to go to training camp, you get there in the early afternoon, you eat lunch, you get to do all the little activities. They have certain games the kids can play, and then you watch practice. But if practices are happening at 10:30 in the morning, you ain't got no time for that. You get in there, you better have eaten McDonald's on the way, and then you better be going and getting there. And then as soon as it's over, do you hang around after, or do you go? And I wonder how that changes the tone of what the training camp experience is for the typical fan.
Yeah, I think the experience will still be there. I just think it'll be the script will be flipped, right? You can get there, watch practice, and then they can still have their lunch, and the players can still talk to the fans at lunchtime, and then they can still do all the interactive activities up on the hill. Maybe while they're walking through, right? Instead of doing it before practice. So, and one other interesting note. All the morning practices are weekdays. If you're going out there on Saturday or Sunday, it's going to be at the normal afternoon time. So they are still going to have that traditional St. Vincent experience on Saturdays and Sundays. So that won't be – if you traditionally go out there on the weekends, your schedule's not really going to be affected all that much. It's only going to be affected Monday through Friday.
We will remind you all of this when we get closer to training camp, because I know that a lot of people will be looking at it. Hey, what's going on here? I missed this, because they might not be paying as much attention to the schedule right now versus how they will when it's late July, early August, and they're looking to pick which days they go there. Ray, thanks so much for joining us here on the North Shore Drive podcast. We'll see you again on Wednesday, but we have to switch topic to talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates. But before that, I want to remind you the show is also sponsored by Moon Township Honda, where you can visit them at 5802 University Boulevard, Moon Township, Pennsylvania, or go to their website, moonhonda.com. Here's more from our friends at Moon Township Honda.
To build the Honda CR-V Hybrid, we took everything you love about the CR-V and kicked it up a notch with greater power for a CR-V unlike any before. Adventure confidently with Honda, car and driver's most awarded brand in 10 Best history. The CR-V and CR-V Hybrid, part of the Honda line of rugged vehicles. Visit your local Honda dealer where new vehicles are arriving daily. Buy online or reserve from select Honda dealers.
We're back here on the Monday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We now switch to the Pittsburgh Pirates, where our man, Noah Hiles, beat writer on the Pittsburgh Pirates, great beat writer. He's been doing his thing. Noah, the Pirates dropped their series to the Rays this weekend. They're able to win on Saturday, lost Friday and Sunday, despite back-to-back games hitting balls in the river, which I don't know when the last time that happened, but I wanted to get your reaction to how this series played out, and also what you saw at Skeens in another great day, but this time they aren't able to capitalize on it.
Yeah, I think it's just another frustrating series for the Pirates when you look at it. We'll start with Friday. They went with the bullpen game, something that has been working for them really well this month. Just didn't work against Tampa. Luis Ortiz didn't have his best stuff. That's going to happen. You can lose that one. But then you look at what you get the next 2 days from Jones and Skeens. Both of them go 7 innings. I mean, Jared Jones was awful in the first inning Saturday. He hit multiple batters, one of them, Rosario, in the face. It looked like he had no control, and he recovers well. Great start from him. Limited bullpen, didn't matter. They got one big inning where they had 3 runs, and of course the O'Neal Cruz home run as well. That was enough to get the win. You go into the rubber match Sunday with Paul Skeens going up against Aaron Savali, a pitcher where the Rays had lost the last 8 times this guy pitched. You would think that that's advantage Pirates. But then you look at the lineup that they played. And again, on Sunday lineups, you're across baseball, you're typically going to see a lesser 1 through 9, simply because it's a day game after a night game. That's when you get your veterans some rest, especially when you have to travel the next day. That's your day off for guys like Andrew McCutchen, or even guys like Nick Gonzalez, who'd been playing a lot and maybe is cooling down a little bit. But that's the problem right now with the Pirates. That game was all of their issues in a microcosm. They have great starting pitching, but they're constantly relying upon the hot hitter of the month to do all of the work. This month is Brian Reynolds, who did all of the work. He out-hit his team. He was 2 for 3 of the walk. The rest of the team, I believe, was 1 for 27, I want to say, with 3 walks. That can't happen, especially against a pitcher who had been struggling, who had one of the worst ERAs in baseball after the first month of the season. So they don't capitalize on opportunities. They don't even get a lot of guys on base to create opportunities. They waste a good start from Skeens. And then you're back into the bullpen, which has been heavily taxed as your closers now on the IL. Holderman and Chapman have been used a lot this month in high leverage spots. Holderman had come into that performance having allowed 2 runs all season. Well, he was due for a bad game. Can't blame that on him. He surrenders 2 runs, and that's the game. You don't have enough firepower right now to get back at it. So I think the problem with Sunday is, you lose another very winnable series. You had the advantage on the mound. Your pitcher did more than enough to give you a really good chance to win, but your lineup isn't deep enough. There's just simply not enough hitters on this team right now for them to remain in a competitive spot. They have to get more from A, what they already have, and B, probably from the outside.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that because it further emphasizes the need for this. This was a chance again against a beatable pitcher with the best pitcher in baseball, arguably right now, and you missed that opportunity. If the Pirates win this game, they would have been a game with 1 game within 500, and they haven't been 1 game within 500 since late April. So they keep stumbling every time they start to build up to it. They keep stumbling back down, and most of the time it points back to the bat. We could talk about middle relievers. That's certainly a problem as well, but to me, when I watch it, when I hear you talk about it, I think, man, this team needs bats. How hard do the Pirates need to press to make a trade before the trade deadline to get a real bat in this lineup, or 2 real bats in this lineup? And how realistic is it that you think that they will do that if you think that's the move they need to make?
Well, I mean, they do need to get aggressive here. I think the question is A, how aggressive, and B, when's it going to happen? Because if you look at the entire major league right now, all of MLB, 2/3 of the league is in reasonable distance of a postseason spot right now. And that's because most of the National League is jumbled together in the race for 2 wild card spots where maybe 3 games separate 9 different teams. So with that many teams being in the mix, you don't have a lot of sellers. And the only teams looking to sell right now at the deadline, they're really bad teams. And as someone who has watched Pittsburgh baseball his whole life, Chris, you would know bad baseball teams typically don't have a lot of great players to offer.
Right.
And because it's a seller's market right now, where there are so many thirsty, desperate teams on the fringe looking to improve, you're going to probably have to overpay for somebody with decent talent, especially if they have multiple years of control. We know how the Pirates feel about that. They don't want to be the first guy off the boat. They don't typically want to be the team that makes an aggressive move. They're a very conservative front office. They don't want to, their biggest fear is giving up too much, be it financial resources, be it minor league prospects, be it anything of that sort, because they feel like they're going to be at their absolute best as an organization by keeping what they've gathered in-house. So with that mentality, it puts them in a very tough spot because eventually you're going to see one team step out and make an aggressive move. I mean, the Padres did it a couple months ago by getting Arez from the Marlins. And now, I mean, he's going to probably win his 3rd batting title for them at second base. But you look, I mean, there are teams that are hitting their stride right now. The St. Louis Cardinals have been playing really good baseball. The Padres are doing a little bit better. Some teams are going to start separating themselves from the pack. And you don't want to be the one of those teams that is on the inverse of it, where a 5-game losing streak could end your season right now when you look at it, because if you lose 5 in a row and other teams win, you separate yourself further back, and then you don't have the incentive to go for it at the deadline. And then everyone else continues to get better while you continue to play with what you have, which clearly doesn't look to be good enough. So I think, you've got to be aggressive now. Why wait for everyone else? And I think after that first move's made, everyone else is going to get hungrier and even more desperate. So the cost is even going to go higher. So why not find a guy that you want right now, make a move? And who's to say that has to be your only move? You can make moves later on, but I mean, these teams, they don't just start looking for trades in June, Chris. I mean, they're identifying players around the calendar. So there are guys out there who I'm sure they have interest in. It's just a matter of being able to reach a price that they feel fair. And it's going to probably require this team to step out of its comfort zone if it wants to get a deal done before someone else.
You wrote an article about this last week, talking about realistic and ambitious targets for the Pirates in trying to make a trade like this happen. And again, not just for hitting, but also for relief pitching, because as good as the bullpen is kind of shaped out to be, the middle relievers still need help here. Who are some of the names that stood out to you as the the ones that make the most sense for who the Pirates are and what they need
for middle relief?
Well, for either or, as far as any targets.
Okay, so I'll give you 3 names.
Okay.
For middle relief, I really like a guy named TJ McFarland from the Oakland A's.
Okay. He's
35 years old. He's a left-hander. You're just adding another veteran who has pitched a lot of baseball, who has playoff experience, and who's in the final year of his deal. It's the Oakland A's. You could probably get him for me. Like, you could just be like, here's an extra beat writer, Oakland. We want TJ McFarland in exchange, and they would give him up. Like, it would cost next to nothing. And that's, of course, a joke. They would not trade a media member for a pitcher. But anyway, so TJ McFarland's the first guy I would look at. The second one would be, as far as realistic opportunities go, I'll actually throw 2 in there. Josh Bell and Tommy Pham are 2 guys I circle that you can get for next to nothing. First base, outfield. You need more offensive production there. And Pham doesn't necessarily provide what you would hope to get as far as a home run bat. He only has like 4 this year, but he's got an above a league average OPS. Again, postseason experience, a guy who can play the corner outfield and just provide consistent offense somewhere in the lineup. And Bell, we all know what you're getting with Josh Bell. You're getting a switch hitter. You're getting a guy who's familiar with PNC Park. You're getting a guy who's played some postseason baseball. And albeit, he's not having the best of years, he's still an upgrade from what you have typically at first base. So those are two guys that I think, again, those three names I just listed, McFarland, Pham, Bell, you should be able to acquire all three of those players without giving away a notable prospect. They're all rentals. It's not a high cost thing, and someone's going to get them. The Pirates should be the one to get them before someone else does, because they'll make a team better. If I'm looking for ambitious targets, there are a couple of other guys I really like, and they're all in the outfield. There's more than a few outfielders right now, Chris, that should be available if you're willing to pay for them. And these guys come with multiple years of control. The sexiest name right now is Luis Robert from the White Sox, a guy who hit 30-plus home runs. He's 26 years old, comes with multiple years of control. Pricey contract, but something the Pirates can more than afford. I'm not super high on him just because of his injury history. He's only had one season so far in the big leagues where he's played over 100 games. That just doesn't seem like a smart investment. And I mean, this year even, he didn't start until June 4th. So again, more injuries there. Other guys, though, you could look at. I mean, you got J.J. Bleday, the guy that I've been banging the table for over the last week in Oakland, a center fielder from Pennsylvania, under team control till 2028, leads the American League in doubles right now. Just a solid bat. Could be the player that you wanted Jack Sawinski to be this year. So you could go get him. And then Jazz Chisholm is another guy that I think could be available if you're willing to pay a steep price. Now, Jazz comes with a little extra, obviously. I mean, this guy's gone on record saying he doesn't like his teammates. He's been voted by the MLB players as the most overrated player in the game. Maybe a change of scenery changes some stuff up for him, because he's still a really good young player that provides some pop and would fill a need. But those are just, again, I just said there's a limited market. There's only a handful of teams that will be selling. There's still players, because of how bad the Pirates offense has been. There are players out there that will still make this team better. You're not going to get a Pete Alonso or a crazy household name at this deadline. There aren't many of them available, period. But for a team like the Pirates, where they are so beneath league average in certain spots offensively, be it, at first base, in the outfield position, even at catcher, there are more than enough opportunities to go get someone to improve those areas.
Absolutely. He's Noah Hiles of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Read all of his work at post-gazette.com as him and Andrew Destin continue covering the Pirates as they make their push throughout the middle part of the season towards the trade deadline. And we'll keep you up to date with all the moves that the Pirates are making. We'll have Noah back on Wednesday when we do the next edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning into the North Shore Drive podcast. Remember, we're on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We also have daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh sports writers, including Noah and Andrew Destin, as they do their content throughout the week covering the Pittsburgh Pirates. We'll have more on the Wednesday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. We'll see you then here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.